So in this video, we're going to be talking about the various types of loops that you might use in VBA. And so the most important question for us to answer is, what are loops? So looping is an essential programming technique that actually allows you to cover huge ranges of data to perform the same repetitive sets of actions on that data. So for example, if you had a table with 30 rows in it and 20 columns and you're trying to change something on every single cell or on every single row, you could use a loop to perform that repetitive task for you rather than having to call out each row individually. Loops are also really helpful for searching through huge reports or huge exports of data for something specific. And there are several different types of loops that we use that we'll cover in this video and in the next few videos. The primary loop is for each or for next, which are both super useful tools. We also have do-until loops, which in VBA is called a do-until loop. In other programming languages, you might hear it referred to as a do-while loop, but they do the same thing. And we also have if statements, and these aren't really loops, but they are often used in coordination with loops to check data and perform actions based on a set of conditions. So first we'll look at the for each next loops. For next loops are the most common loop structure, and they can accomplish almost anything you need to do with loops. So the code is going to start with whatever number you feed it. In this example over here, we're starting with the number 1. And it will end on whatever number you specify, so in this case 6. And this is great for looping through rows or columns of data. We can perform anything in this particular action set here, and it'll end when we tell it to next x. Now for each loops are similar to for next loops, but they can be applied more comfortably to specified ranges, or to look at every cell in a provided range, to look at every sheet in the workbook. That sort of situation is where you'd want to use a for each loop. So as an example over here, we've set this up where we're going to look at every cell in a predetermined range and change that value to be loop. Now do until loops are also fairly common. You'll see these pretty frequently. Again, a lot of other languages will refer to them as do while, but we actually call do until in VBA. And they have similar applications, so in this case you actually have to create your variable ahead of time, so rather than telling it in this statement, I want you to start on 1 and end on 10, we have to predetermine what our x value is here. And you have to give the code a condition that has to be met to break out of that loop. So you can create do-until loops that behave like for loops in this way by adding a counter, which is this x equals x plus 1 line at the end here. And this also has more unique applications if there's a specific condition you're looking for, like maybe you're looking for a bold cell or a value of over 500 and you're not sure when you're going to hit it. This is a kind of scenario where this loop would meet that condition and would help you identify that. If statements are also really powerful tools in programming. They let you impose a criteria on something and then perform a set of actions based on whether or not that criteria is met. So in this example, we can see we tell the system if this criteria is met, then perform all of these actions. Otherwise, perform these actions if we fail. If statements are often used in conjunction with loops to check the values of cells and perform actions on whether or not that value meets a certain criteria. So looking at this example, we have a for loop here, for x equals 1 to 10. We're pulling our test value using that x, so this might be a case where we're looking at a row or something like that. And then if this value is greater than 5, we want to get a message box that tells us that. Otherwise, we want to get a message box that specifies that as well. You can build two-dimensional loops to look through rows and columns or to identify each individual cell in a range. You can also build triple loops or quadruple loops or however many nested loops you need to get the job done. Just keep in mind that each layer you add will increase the runtime of your code. So it's best practice to try to use as few loops as possible and to do them in a super efficient way. So all in all, there's a lot of different types of loops that you have to choose from. They're all fit to different situations where one might be better than the other, but they're all really powerful tools. They're all very helpful. They can minimize the number of lines that you end up with your code. They can handle repetitive actions in your code, kind of like creating a private subroutine, and calling that out from a public subroutine can help you break down your code a little bit as well. If statements aren't technically loops, but they're also great to use in conjunction with loops to make sure you're really identifying the information that you need. And we mainly use for next loops, for each loops, and do until loops. So we'll see examples of how to apply these loops in a future video.